Hey guys, Jake here, bringing you my 2022 in the bag. I apologize, I meant to get this out earlier, but I recorded this a few times, including at Worlds, and the audio and stuff kept getting messed up, so had to redo it a few times. Hopefully this is the one that works. But yeah, we'll get into it. Before we start looking at what's in my bag, I do want to talk about a change just in general about how I've been designing and building my bag. Previously, I've mentioned that when I throw discs, I try to throw them basically same power, high, not max power, but high power, basically all the time, every shot, and then just swap the discs out to get different flights, right? So for more consistency, which I still believe if you're going to try to go and be like a professional at this game, that still makes the most sense to me. It eliminates the most variables. By using the same sort of throw every time, your body can get very good at that repetition. It seems like the way to consistency. But having said that, I'm getting older. My body can't take that kind of abuse over and over again. I can't be just hucking full power drives all day long, especially if I'm doing multiple rounds for tournaments, things like that. So with this year, I've kind of taken a different approach, stepped back and said, well, that might be the best way to do it for a pro, but I'm obviously not a pro. I need a body that's going to actually function for other work for the rest of my life here. So I've kind of changed my strategy, and now I'm trying to work on throwing things at different velocities, working with more understable discs, working on angle control to give me more variety of shots with less molds. Removing sort of the variables from the other side by throwing less different molds, I guess, is sort of the intention. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I still love collecting plastics, so it's hard for me not to buy new discs. But that's the idea. So you'll notice my bag is slightly different than before, a little bit more understable stuff in there. But so far it's working pretty well. There's definitely been a little drop in consistency here and there, but overall, I feel a lot healthier. I find myself a lot less injured most of the time. Nothing critical or like major ever happened, but like you can just tell like after certain rounds, my body would be like, yeah, you tweaked this or that, and for the next couple days you're gonna feel it. So, yeah, that's sort of the intro to this, and let's hop into the putters, probably the most important part of the game, next. All right, putters. I am still rocking my Electron Pilots. I still love these guys for putting. Great in Circle 1 and Circle 2. They're comfortable in the hand. They're just, neutral. I mean, not that it really matters inside Circle 1 or even really that much in Circle 2, but not super overstable or understable, just sort of neutral discs. However, when it comes to throwing them, which I do, I throw these guys as well as putt with them, there is a difference when you start looking at your putters. And these guys are fantastic for those short approaches, anything, under 250 feet or so. If I need just a straight, gentle, straight at the basket kind of shot, or maybe a slight little ante around a corner or something, I'm reaching for my pilots. I used to bag a premium blend pilot for some of the scrambling shots, forehands, things like that. I found that if I just, have a little bit better touch and work with the angles, these guys will do just as much without having to bag another pilot. So I've just been running with the two, using them for putting and for approaches. Just a really great disc, lots of glide. Not much else you can say about it. Great putters. Next up, we'll look at the approach discs in general. All right, approach discs. These are the discs that I'm going to use for shots probably 250 to 300 feet. I already mentioned that I do throw the pilot for some of those, but that's pretty much the shorter range, straight to maybe some slight antes. Otherwise, first thing, gotta have me an Electron Envy. This one is a soft or medium. I'm not entirely sure, honestly. It feels like a soft to me. I love these guys because they are dead straight with maybe a little drift to the right when they start to beat in. Um, that's the most useful way that I find to use these Electron Envies is just for those dead straight tunnel shots, um, where the disc isn't going to go left or right really. It's just going to kind of stay on a line. Um, Once they beat in a little bit, they might drift a hair to the right. But generally, this is just a tunnel shot disc. Um, I've got a bunch of these that I cycle through in various stages of wear. I was a little concerned at first with the latest runs of these, the ones that say James Conrad's signature or whatever on them, because I got a couple of those that had been extremely overstable as far as the Electron ones go, with a lot less glide, almost like throwing a premium Envy. So I was worried that newer Electron Envies coming out weren't going to be as straight. But I did get another one of those just recently at Am Worlds that was a misprint that seems to be very much like these guys have been, my older ones. So I'm confident that maybe I just got a couple of duds, or a little bit of variance in one of the batches or something. But hopefully they'll still make these ones for quite a while where they're just dead straight, because I absolutely love them. So yeah, also a great grip in the crap weather. So this is also very valuable when it starts getting rainy or like hot and humid and you're losing grip in your hands and stuff. Next up, I have a premium Envy. In this case, it is a Prism Plasma, one of the new ones. They are beautiful, I gotta say. Essentially, it doesn't really matter which plastic this is, as long as it's either neutron or proton or plasma. The plasma ones, I feel like they get a little bit better glide, but essentially any of the Envies that fly sort of dead straight with a nice little finish at the end, it's just such a money disc for hyzer approaches, for just dead straight to fade shots. You can throw them on little anti-flexes, and they'll ride for quite a while before they come out. Just a really, really useful disc. Absolutely love it. Not as much glide and not as straight as the Electron ones, but still have a lot of valuable shots in them. After that, I have a Neutron Soft Envy. So this guy, aside from being soft and cool looking, is a much more overstable Envy than the other premium one we just looked at. This particular run of Neutron Soft, or if you get the Eclipse 2.0 ones, some of them, or like Cosmic Neutron maybe, some of them are just way more overstable than a normal premium Envy. Like this thing is somewhere between a premium Envy and an Entropy. Like it is a beefcake. But it's also very nice to have because it's great for like forehands, as well as if I really just want it to dump hard, or if I want to throw a harder flex, this guy can hold up a lot more, or for a lot stronger headwinds and things like that than my other premium Envy. Also, this thing has way less glide than my other Envies, so I can work with this for distance control. It's been really nice. I don't know, it's hard to say that I love it as an Envy, just because it flies a little different than I'd want an Envy to fly, but I do love this for what it brings to the table. It's almost like a beat-in Entropy for me. So yeah, I've been loving it. Been throwing this a lot lately. Just a really great disc. Also great for some spike hyzers, shorter spike hyzers, where I know it's not going to flip up when I hit it hard. So that's a solid choice. And the last approach disc I have is the Entropy. Just a great disc for like forehand trouble shots, out of the woods if you're scrambling. It's again great for distance control. If you're throwing it flat, it'll fade and dump really hard at the end. You can throw them on hard flexes and know they're going to come out. It's also a disc that doesn't skip a whole ton. I find it's pretty good about sticking where it lands. So I like to have this for something I can trust to stick near the basket wherever I put it. Yeah, and so those are my approach discs. Everything up to around 300 feet maximum, I would say, is where I would start, is where I would use those discs. But next, we're going to look at the mid-ranges. All right, mid-ranges. So my mid-ranges are usually the discs that I'm going to be throwing from anywhere from 280 to about 330 or so. That's sort of the range where I'll be looking for these guys. We'll start at the understable side of things. The Neutron Paradox. Absolutely loving this disc. I think in the last In the Bag I mentioned that I was playing around with it, probably wouldn't make the bag for sure, and I said that for a long time, and I have thrown this so many times since then. It just always comes out as being an option on just about every shot. There's a weird paradox line that you're like, huh, maybe that would work. But just a stupidly understable disc. You can throw this thing with almost no power and get at least a straight shot, if not still a little bit of a turnover. So I love this disc for a variety of utility shots that I didn't know were a thing. So like my favorite example is if I have a tree in front of me and I need to go high, like a nose up shot, and still have it like turn over and go right for some reason, this disc will do it. I can throw this thing so nose up and crappy that any other disc would stall out and go left. This thing will turn over and glide out to the right. It's so weird. Also, these flip up shots from like restricted areas in the rough where you just don't have any range of motion, just a little wrist flick, either forehand or backhand, and this thing will stand up or roll over, or whatever you want it to do, and get out some pretty crazy gaps. As well as you can throw this thing at like 30% power down a gap, and it will just fly basically dead straight. Maybe it'll drift off to the right. Just insane. I have finally given up on saying it's just a novelty disc. I love this disc. I probably throw it 3 to 5 times around now, which is a lot for a utility. Yeah, it's just such a good disc. Absolutely love it. You should be bagging one if you're not, and learn how to use it. It takes a little while to figure out what it does and how you can make it useful, but once you do, there's a shot everywhere for this thing. Next up, this is new in the bag, the Uplink, the Neutron Uplink. This is a Neutron Soft. Just a great understable mid. It reminds me a lot of a slightly faster and slightly flippier Mako 3. I can hit it really hard and it'll just drift to the right without ever really kind of coming out. It doesn't have a ton of fade. It's also great for hyzer flips up in the woods for long straight shots. It's got a lot of glide. You can get good distance out of it. I have some regular Neutron ones as well. They're all great. They all fly roughly the same. The Neutron Soft one is maybe a hair more overstable from what I've experienced, but it's still guaranteed to turn if you hit it hard. If you throw a little softer, you can just get nice straight shots, kind of like hex lines, but at like 60 to 70% power, which is kind of nice. As well as it's really nice for throwing big annies because it'll just hold the annie a lot longer than the hex would, also with a lot less power. So yeah, I've been loving this guy. I've been using it a lot, especially in the woods. I didn't love the hand feel at first, but I've gotten used to it, and I actually really enjoy it now. There is some thought that maybe when this, the new Echo, the Streamline understable mid-range comes out, that, you know, I'll compare them and I'll see if that can replace it, depending on how it feels and how it flies. But for now, the Uplink has a place in the bag. Next up, we have the Hex. I raved about it last time, and I continue to rave about it. This thing is such a long flying mid. This thing will go like fairway distances if you really hit it, and it won't turn over on you, and it won't fade out on you. It's just a straight disc. I should say that with the warning that I throw about 400 feet maximum. So if you're a power thrower, this might turn over. It does supposedly have a -1 turn, but with my range of power, it does not turn. So this is just a dead straight disc, goes a long ways, lots of glide. You can throw it on Annie, you can throw it on hyzer, and it'll mostly hold those lines. If I throw it on hyzer, sometimes it'll start to flip up a little bit, depending on how heavy or new it is. But mostly just a straight flying mid. Absolutely love it. It's everything that I wish that the Buzz would be. Can't rave about this thing enough. And the last mid I'm bagging is the Pyro. The Pyro is just a super nice, overstable utility disc. I think the feature I love the most about the Pyro is that it skips so far, so much further than like a high-speed driver even. These things, for whatever reason, when they catch edge, will just go a mile. But also, they're great for forehands, great for scramble shots, even backhands now. I used to not throw much backhand, but now for just a really strong fade at the end of a straight flight, you can hit these things really hard and they don't fade right away. Like a deflector or something is just going to start fading. This thing will go perfectly straight for quite a while before it just dumps out. So just a fantastic utility disc. Yeah, if you don't have one, you should. You'll notice that I don't have a reactor in the bag anymore. Not because I don't love the reactor. Still love the reactor. Great disc. But there's just a lot of overlap between my hex and then being able to like power down on a fairway. You can really get a lot of the same flights, for me anyway, that I was getting with the reactor. And I found myself, I wouldn't use it for, 5, 6 rounds at a time. It would just be in the bag taking up space. So I still love the disc. It's still a fantastic mid, and if you want something a little more overstable than a hex, that's the money disc. Or if you want something a little less overstable than like a Pyro, that's the money disc. But for me, there's just a little too much overlap in there, so I pulled it out. Yeah, so that's the mids. Next, we'll move on to the fairways. Alright guys, let's take a look at these fairway drivers. I have a few different molds, but my mold of choice is the Crave. The Crave is an amazing fairway driver. It does a lot of things and it goes a long ways. Sort of like I talk about with the Hex. The Hex is like a really long flying mid. The Crave is a really long flying fairway. I can almost get max distance from me with this disc, which is 6.5 speed or whatever. It's just crazy. They don't come out of the sky. They just go forever. But the other nice thing about them is that you can get a lot of different flights depending on the plastics and the weights that you choose. So, to start things off, I have my understable Crave. I have this Fission 148 gram Crave that right away when I got it, I could hit it hard and knew it was going to turn right. It's really good about turning, but then fading out before it hits so it doesn't turn into a cut roller. But it definitely will turn, so I can get some nice shots to get around some corners. Also great for hyzer flipping up to flat in the woods, goes a long ways. And I just really like the lightweight feel as far as getting a good clean release. So really digging the Fission, lightweight Fission Crave. Next up, I have a Neutron Sarah Hokum, just standard Crave. This one's actually a 159, so it's a little light. But I find that most of the Neutron ones, regardless of weight, do the same flight. They're going to have the gentle little turn and a gentle fade. Just a nice long straight S-curve. This is no exception, even though it's light. So I love having one of these in the bag just for those long max distance fairway shots that don't go too far left and right. It's just a pretty tight little S that it'll fly. So really great. Love this disc. It's my sort of default driver, fairway driver. And last, I've got another Fission Crave, but this one's a 173. I found that the heavy Fission flies a lot more like the old Proton or the latest Cosmic Neutron, where it doesn't have much, if any, turn, and then a little bit heavier fade. I find that it just holds up a little better in the wind, or if I really don't want any turn, but I don't want to fade too hard. It's a great disc. Also, these are really nice for forehands. I can throw them on a nice little forehand flip up and get a good, decent flight out of them with all the glides. So I kind of have an understable, a standard, and an overstable Crave to sort of fill all sorts of shots in my fairway lineup. Honorable mention, today I picked up an Ascend, just on a whim while I was at the store, and that disc is amazing. I did not expect it, but it's basically a slightly flippier than my understable Crave, but without a lot of the fade. So it can turn a lot more for me, and that's like just straight off the shelf that way too. So Don't be fooled by the numbers if you haven't tried one yet. That disc is it's maybe a -2. It's probably the numbers that you get on a relay. That's what it flies like. But just a really nice disc, comes out clean, gets good distance, a lot of glide, stays in the air. Fantastic. So we'll see. Maybe that'll come in place of the really light craves. I don't know. I got to play with it some more. But for now, I'm just using craves for that shot. Next fairway, the Neutron Volt. This guy is just a really reliable, straight to overstable driver, fairway driver. If I throw it hard and flat in normal conditions, it's going to slowly hyzer the whole way. It's not going to turn on me. If I throw it into a headwind, it's going to stay basically perfectly straight all the way to the ground. They're great for hyzer shots, or if I just need a straight to fade, or if I want to do a low driving flex. Just really, really good at all of those lines, as well as being one of my favorite all-time forehand discs. Absolutely love this. Feels super comfortable, comes out super clean. Absolutely dig this thing. So yeah, the Volt. Last fairway, my utility fairway, which, well, we'll call it a fairway. It's a speed 9. I'm not really sure where the delineation is, but we're treating it as a fairway. This is a stupidly overstable fairway. It's purely for utility shots, overhand, spike hyzers, skip shots, rollers. This fireball is super great. This one's ridiculously flat and overstable. It has no glide whatsoever. So it's specifically for those utility shots. I have considered trying out a Terra just to see if that'd be an interesting disc to potentially replace the fireball, but I kind of like having the no glide in my utility disc. This is just, most of the time when this comes out, it's raging headwinds, and I really don't want it to like get up and go anywhere. So the fact that it dumps and has no glide is kind of a plus. So really loving the fireball. I used to throw them more often, but I find that the Volt is actually filling in a lot of those shots for me now. So yeah, I find it's probably only used maybe once a round, but it's still very nice, kind of a safety blanket. If you don't have one, you'll need one. And if you have it, you probably won't use it. So I really, really enjoy it though. Fireball, great disc. And next, we'll take a look at the distance drivers. All right, last category, long distance drivers. For me, that means up to about 400 feet, and anything beyond 350 feet. I don't tend to throw a ton of big distance shots just because a lot of the courses around me don't require it. I play a lot of wooded courses with shorter holes. There are a few bomber courses, the Airborne Preserve, which many people are familiar with from the Preserve Championship. There's a couple others around here that have some monster drives, but for the most part, I feel like the courses that I end up at don't really require them, so I don't pack a ton of them. But the ones I have, I absolutely love. First up, my workhorse driver, and the most likely one to see me throwing, is the Fission Photon. I absolutely love these things. They are, every brand has their, 11.5, -1.2, or whatever disc, the driver of choice. I think that's the destroyer numbers. Maybe that's a 12 speed, I don't know. But whatever. Everybody's got a driver that does the same thing, where you throw it, it's going to have a little bit of turn, a nice hefty fade at the end. It's going to go a long ways, good glide. That's Photon. You can beat them in to where they'll turn a little more, or you can get them heavier where they'll meet hook up and they won't really turn. I kind of prefer the ones that are lighter weight, anywhere in the 150s or the low 160s. They just tend to get the right amount of fade and or right amount of turn followed by a decent amount of fade, so that I get the maximum flight out of them. They also hold up well in the wind, and I can trust to throw them on a hyzer without them flipping up too much. So if I really need, because of heavy wind conditions, I'll bag a heavier Fission Photon to avoid it turning over on me. But these things hold up pretty well in the headwind, even like a 155. It'll just basically fly straight. If you let it go on Annie, it might hold the Annie a long time, but as long as you release it mostly straight or a slight hyzer, it should stay pretty straight, pretty long flying. So yeah, Fission Photon, amazing disc. The next disc, a disc I never thought I'd see in the bag, Fission Wave. So previously, prior to end of 2021, early 2022, whenever this run came out, Waves, every plastic I tried, flip over, instant roller, just didn't matter what angle you put it on, was not the disc for me. Not saying it's a bad disc, it just wasn't the disc for me. This run comes out, and these things are so much more overstable. This thing is about the same stability as the Fission Photon when you get them in the really lightweights. So this is at a 175. Well, this particular one isn't, but most of the... And my audio just stopped recording for some reason. So I guess you'll get to look at me while I try to recapture my thoughts here. The Wave will turn over to the right. It just doesn't fade back like a Photon. It's got a similar sort of fade, or turn I should say, where I can hit it hard and it's not going to roll on me, but it'll drift to the right, and then just a very gradual fade. So it's been a nice complement to the Photon. Just incredibly surprised when I started throwing these. The heavy ones are just so nice. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else really to say about them. They go a long ways. You should definitely try one out, especially if you've only tried the ones from the past that were very, very flippy. You may be surprised by these ones the same way I was. And that was really it for the drivers, so I'm just going to cut this off here, and I apologize for the audio issues here in the end. I'm going to have to figure out a different recording system because for whatever reason it's definitely not working. I will say that I'm going to try to get some reviews together, hopefully sometime this week, maybe next week, for the Uplink and the Paradox. So if you're interested in those, feel free to subscribe. If you have comments about my bag or questions or want to talk about some of your experiences with my discs, or the discs that I'm bagging, I guess, feel free to drop a comment. Love to hear it. Otherwise, I will catch you guys in the next one.